Meet Jake. Jake was 16, a typical teenager growing up in a small town in Ohio. He loved video games, sneaking out with his friends, and blasting music way too loud in his room. But if you asked him about his dad, Michael, Jake would just roll his eyes. "He's too strict," he'd say, "always on my case about grades, chores, my future." To Jake, his dad was just there, always working, always tired, always nagging. What Jake didn't know was that Michael was carrying a weight heavier than any teenager could imagine. Michael was a single dad. Jake's mom had walked out when Jake was just 5. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. Michael worked double shifts at the steel mill to keep the lights on. He wasn't perfect. He'd come home exhausted, sometimes snapping at Jake over small things. But every night after Jake went to bed, Michael would sit at the kitchen table, balancing bills, skipping meals so Jake could have new sneakers or that gaming console he wanted. Jake never saw that side of his dad. All he saw was the man who said no too often. Things changed when Jake turned 17. He started hanging with the wrong crowd. Late nights turned into missed curfews. Good grades turned into failing reports. One night, Jake came home at 2 a.m., reeking of cheap beer. Michael was waiting in the living room, his face like stone. "Where were you?" he asked. Jake just shrugged. "Out." That was the night it all exploded. Words were thrown like knives. Jake screamed, "You don't get me! You never have!" Michael shouted back, "I'm trying to save you, Jake. You're throwing your life away." It ended with Jake storming out, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. Michael stood there alone, staring at the door, wondering where he went wrong. What Jake didn't know was that Michael didn't sleep that night, or the next. He was terrified his son was slipping away. Months passed. Jake barely came home. He'd crash at friends' houses, skipping school, getting into fights. Michael tried everything, calling, texting, even showing up at Jake's hangout spots. But Jake pushed him away every time. "Leave me alone, Dad," he'd say. And Michael would, but only after making sure Jake had enough money for food or a warm jacket. He never stopped trying, even when it hurt. One rainy night, everything changed. Jake was at a party, drunk, angry, lost. He got into a fight, over something stupid, as fights often are. But this time, it went too far. Jake took a punch to the face, stumbled back, and hit his head on the corner of a table. Blood everywhere. His so-called friends scattered, leaving him on the floor, barely conscious. Someone called 911, and Jake was rushed to the hospital. Michael got the call at 3 a.m. He didn't hesitate. He threw on his coat, drove through the storm, and ran into the ER like his life depended on it. When he saw Jake, his boy, bruised, hooked up to monitors, looking so small in that hospital bed, Michael broke. He sat by Jake's side, holding his hand, whispering, "I'm here, son. I'm not going anywhere." Jake woke up the next morning, groggy, confused. He saw his dad, eyes red from crying, still holding his hand. For the first time in years, Jake didn't pull away. He didn't roll his eyes. He just looked at his dad and said, "I'm sorry." Those 2 words broke the dam. Michael hugged him, tears streaming down his face. "I love you, Jake," he said. "I always will." That night was a turning point. Jake didn't magically change overnight. Recovery was slow. He had to face consequences, community service, therapy, rebuilding his life. But Michael was there every step of the way. He took time off work, went to counseling with Jake, even started playing video games with him to reconnect. Jake began to see his dad for who he really was, a man who'd been fighting for him even when Jake didn't deserve it. Years later, Jake posted this story on Reddit. He wrote, "My dad never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I was a punk kid who thought I knew everything, but he saw something in me I couldn't see. Now I'm 25, working as a mechanic, and every day I try to make him proud. He's my hero." The post got thousands of upvotes, with comments pouring in from people who saw their own dads in Michael's story. Jake and Michael are closer than ever now. They still argue sometimes. Old habits die hard, but it's different. There's love there, unspoken but unbreakable. Jake says the one thing he'll never forget is waking up in that hospital bed, seeing his dad's face, and realizing he'd been there all along. So what's the lesson here? Maybe it's that love isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's in the quiet moments, the late nights, the sacrifices, the refusal to give up. If you've got someone like that in your life, maybe give them a call. Tell them you see them, because one day you might realize they were the one thing keeping you grounded all along. Jake and Michael are closer than ever now. They still argue sometimes. Old habits die hard, but it's different. There's love there, unspoken but unbreakable. Jake says the one thing he'll never forget is waking up in that hospital bed, seeing his dad's face, and realizing he'd been there all along. But the story doesn't end there. Life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds, and for Adam and Michael, the next few years brought challenges they never saw coming. This is the part of the story that shows you what love really looks like. Messy, raw, and sometimes a little broken. But the story doesn't end there. Life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. And for Adam and Michael, the next few years brought challenges they never saw coming. This is the part of the story that shows you what love really looks like. Messy, raw, and sometimes a little broken. But then, life threw a curveball. It was a cold December morning when Michael started coughing. At first, he brushed it off. Just a cold, he'd say, waving Adam off. But the cough didn't go away. It got worse. Adam noticed his dad looking pale, tired, like the weight of the world was back on his shoulders. One night, Adam found Michael hunched over the kitchen table, struggling to breathe. "Dad, we're going to the doctor. Now," Adam said, his voice firm but shaking with worry. The doctor's visit turned into a hospital stay. Tests, scans, waiting rooms. Adam sat by Michael's side through it all, just like Michael had done for him years ago. The diagnosis came like a punch to the gut. Lung cancer. Years of working in the steel mill, breathing in dust and fumes, had taken their toll. The doctor said it was treatable, but it wouldn't be easy. Chemo, radiation, bills piling up. Michael looked at Adam and said, "I don't want you to worry, son. I'll be fine." But Adam could see the fear in his dad's eyes. For the first time, their roles reversed. Adam became the caretaker. He'd wake up at 5 a.m. to drive Michael to chemo, then head straight to the garage to work a 10-hour shift. He'd come home, cook dinner, usually burning it, which made Michael laugh, and sit with his dad, watching old westerns until Michael fell asleep. Adam didn't complain, not once. But late at night, when the house was quiet, he'd sit in his room, head in his hands, wondering if he'd lose the man who'd given him everything. One day, during a particularly rough chemo session, Michael grabbed Adam's hand. His voice was weak, but his grip was firm. "I'm proud of you, Adam," he said. "I know I wasn't always the best dad, but seeing the man you've become, it's all I ever wanted." Adam's throat tightened. He wanted to say so much, how he'd never have made it without Michael, how he was sorry for every fight, every slammed door, but all he could manage was, "I love you, Dad." Michael smiled, a tired but genuine smile, and for a moment the hospital room didn't feel so cold. The next few months were a blur of hope and heartbreak. Some days, Michael seemed stronger, cracking jokes, even talking about that fishing trip again. Other days, he could barely get out of bed. Adam started writing letters to his dad, things he couldn't say out loud. "Dear Dad," one letter began, "I used to think you were hard on me because you didn't care. Now I know it's because you cared too much. I'm trying to be half the man you are." He never showed Michael the letters, but writing them kept him going. One evening, as spring rolled around, Michael had a good day. He felt strong enough to sit outside on the porch. Adam joined him, bringing 2 cups of coffee. Black, just how Michael liked it. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset. Then Michael turned to Adam and said, "You know, I never told you this, but after your mom left, I thought I'd failed you. I thought I wasn't enough. But you turned out better than I ever dreamed." Adam's eyes welled up. "You were always enough, Dad," he said. "Always." That moment on the porch became one of Adam's most cherished memories. Michael's treatment started showing results. He wasn't out of the woods, but the doctors were optimistic. Adam kept working, kept fighting, just like his dad had taught him. And that fishing trip, they finally made it happen. On a quiet Saturday morning, they drove to a lake, just the 2 of them. They didn't catch much, but they laughed, talked, and for the first time in a long time, felt like the world wasn't against them. Adam updated his Reddit post a few months later. He wrote, "My dad's still fighting, and so am I. I thought I knew what strength was when I got my life together, but watching him battle cancer showed me what real strength looks like. We're not perfect, but we're in this together." The post went viral again.